Hello, good afternoon there. I'm Alissa Cadigan. I'm going to have to correct them. I'm actually a senior manager at RSM, not yet a partner. Soon to be, hopefully. Keep fingers crossed there. So I'm in RSM's technology industry audit practice, and I'll be your moderator for this Courageous Conversations panel. So if you don't know, RSM is the #1 middle market accounting firm, if you haven't heard of us. And to give you a little bit of background on the theme for our panel today, so at RSM, we strive to be the first choice advisor to the middle market. We deliver on that promise by living what we refer to as our 5 C's. Those are our 5 core values. They're curious, caring, collaborative, critical thinkers, and yes, of course, courageous. So without further ado, I'm going to turn it over to our panelists. I'll let them introduce themselves and their company and talk about how their company's brand lives by the core value of being courageous. You want to kick it off?
Well, that's an interesting question. Rick Glickman. I've spent the better part of the last 25 or so years with companies that were equity-backed. Most of them led to successful exits for the equity partners and some of the employees, needless to say. The last 20 or so has been really focused on turnarounds, which when you get to the point where you step into an ugly situation and are able to help the investors realize a return, it's kind of viewed as a positive thing. Sold my last company, not my company, but sold the last company I was involved with a little over a year ago. And right now, I've started a consulting firm called Glickman Advisors, where I have the opportunity to meet a lot of interesting companies, mostly in the technology sector. I've got a handful of clients, only one of which is a turnaround, fortunately, so that's a good thing. But what I try to do is just somewhat embrace the notion of client first and customer first. And sometimes that may complicate the missions of some of the companies I've been involved with. But I think in that context, the term courageous comes into play.
I'll take this one. Hi, everyone. I'm Nathaniel Teichman. I run strategy and business development at a company called Master and Dynamic. We are a premium audio company, so we make wireless headphones, speakers, earphones, and other musical accessories. I think for us, in terms of courage, I think back to the way our company was started and our founder. He was neither an audio industry executive, he wasn't Dr. Dre, he didn't have any history in music whatsoever, but his son was an avid DJ and was gifted a pair of Beats headphones and immediately stopped using them. So Jonathan, our CEO, saw that there was something missing in the market, and he kind of went and talked around to different customers, potential customers, and followed his gut and his intuition, which was that there was a demand and a desire for a headphone and an earphones that looked as good as they sounded, so very high-end, but also the highest level of audio as well. And that is kind of the mission that we have been fulfilling ever since. So I guess he could have backed away, but he really kind of followed his conviction and what his belief was. And we try to exemplify that every day and follow that mission every day. So that's kind of our spin on that, I would suppose.
Great. Hi, my name's John Heller. I'm the Chief Operating Officer of Swell Bottle, located here in New York City. Swell was started about 10 years ago by a female entrepreneur, Sarah Kaus. Sarah had an idea that her water bottle should be as beautiful as her handbag and has the rest of her accessories. It should also be a high-performance product that allows her water to stay cold or hot for extended periods of time. And it should be a means to help the world eliminate single-use plastic. So she started the company with the mission to eliminate single-use plastic, and that's been a core of our DNA from that initial time. But she also did it. She was a former tax accountant with E&Y, and she had no experience in sourcing products overseas or designing double-walled stainless steel products. So she figured that out. She built a leading brand in the category without a single dollar of outside money. So she self-funded it, and she's still the 100% owner of the organization. She's been on the cover of Inc. magazine and has had great success. But her courage is really taking that leap of faith to be able to do that, to build this brand, but also to be able to bring on experienced people to be able to help her grow it. But because she's never taken outside money, she doesn't have a board of directors. She doesn't have a venture fund that she needs to report to. And her ability to tap into personal advisors, people that she has relationships across many industries, has allowed her to get insight and get feedback from people about some of the big decisions that need to be made while still maintaining a focus on sustainability and the whole mission of eliminating single-use plastic.
Great, thank you. So now we're going to take this down to a little bit of a personal level. If you can talk to us about a personal experience where you've had a courageous conversation, either within the boardroom or beyond, and how you've grown from that experience, and maybe some advice for the audience as they navigate their own courageous conversations.
I have a couple that come to mind, but the one that I want to share with you, early on in my career, after I left public accounting, I went to work for a global advertising agency, didn't have industry experience. And 3 months into my tenure, I had to meet with the president of the agency and the vice chairman and worldwide creative director to present the budget. So imagine walking into that room, and 5 minutes into my discussion, the creative director stood up and said, "Rick, you don't know what you're talking about," and stormed out of the room. And that was a unique experience for me. I mean, not that, through the early part of your careers, you know everything. But I went back to my office, shell-shocked, and realized it wasn't me who didn't know what I was talking about. It dawned on me then he didn't know what I was talking about because he really, either he wasn't paying attention or he didn't have interest. And having worked with a lot of creative people over the years, you either adapt to the business economics as well as the creativity that you're required to deliver, or you don't. Long story short, it was a tremendous lesson for me because from that point forward, in every role and every company that I've been involved with, I realized that not only, and I have a financial background, not only am I responsible for the finances and operations of the companies I'm involved with, but I'm an educator. I have to teach people who really don't have the background that I do so that they can better understand what makes a business run. And what I try and tell people as I'm come across opportunities to do so is stay true to your convictions, understand the circumstance, and don't just think that other people are the right one. They have the answers and you don't. And just as an aside, I'll share with you that confrontation was an interesting one and was indicative of the individual. We both left the agency at the same time. And I joke that I'm not sure who went on to a more lucrative career, but his name was James Patterson, who is the top-selling author of all time on the New York Times bestseller list. And he also used the names of people he knew in his book. And years later, I found my name in a very dark book.
Might have to check that book out.
It's out of print.
You never know. eBay, maybe.
I tried.
Okay, so for my experience, I've worked in a number of different startups, and fortunately or unfortunately, because they help you grow, but they're not always the most pleasant, I found myself in a fair number of these situations. I think probably the most instructive example is from a previous company where essentially I came to learn that our entire technology team was on the verge or actively about to quit our company, and we were a tech company. Not ideal when you are a tech company and you have your whole team about to leave. And that was because one of our co-founders who was managing this team was doing so in, frankly, a mentally abusive way. And when I learned this, I wasn't really sure exactly what to do. I knew if I didn't do anything, our company was going to be in a very difficult situation. And I also knew that the behavior I was witnessing was not right. That can be difficult when someone is in a powerful position, especially relative to yourself. So what I ended up doing was having a conversation with our other co-founder, who is our CEO, and explaining the situation that, look, if we don't do something, we are not going to have a company. And that was a very uncomfortable situation. It caught them off guard. And initially, I was met with a lot of resistance and anger, like, you can't be right, what are you talking about? But as we kind of dug into it more, our co-founder came to realize this was actually something we needed to deal with, and it was true. And we kind of followed through on that. So we together went and met with the other co-founder that was causing the issues, and kind of had a really difficult discussion, and actively ended up coaching that person. In the long run, that unfortunately didn't work the way we wanted it to, and the board stepped in and asked that person to leave the company, so that basically the company could survive, and also so that we would have a healthy work environment. It was a very uncomfortable situation for all involved, as you can imagine, and I'm sure most people here have hopefully not quite been in that situation, but you've maybe have seen something similar. So in terms of a takeaway, what I found was, if I couldn't go home at the end of the day and be comfortable with the decisions I was making, and have respect for myself and the people around me, then that wasn't a situation I could live with. So that was kind of what drove my actions and my decisions. So I would just say, check your own moral compass or your own gut and how you feel, and act accordingly. Obviously be smart about the way that you do it, because there are repercussions. But at the end of the day, you have to go home and be happy with the decisions you're making.
That's great. Good story. At a former role that I had, I was in the supply chain organization responsible for building direct relationships with our major retailers. We were a consumer product good company, and we dealt with the largest retailers in the U.S. And one particular retailer, which was our largest customer, drove significant amount of volume, but also had a very low level of forecast accuracy. And some of the challenge were the sales team was really trying to use this customer to hit their numbers and really drive potentially a lot of end of quarter activity. One of the this resulted in a very fractious relationship between us and the customer, because fill rates were down, on-time performance was poor, and there was just opportunities for improvement. So my team and I raised our hand and say, we can implement a vendor-managed inventory program. We hadn't done it before, but we were confident that we had the data to be able to do it. And we leveraged the data access that we had. We put the program in place, and we immediately drove improvements in our overall process and forecast accuracy, drove numerous benefits for both us and for the customer. But at the same time, because we were writing the orders for the customer to fulfill, we also had the power to be able to drive the same kind of activity that the sales team was looking for, especially towards end of quarters where there was incremental volume needed to hit projections, let's say. And what that resulted in is the conflict of the work we were trying to do. And you talk about how you've got to kind of follow your gut, and I reference it to be, when you start to have those tummy rumbles about, what you don't feel, what's not right, and you're thinking about it in bed at night, it's really kind of, impacting what you're doing, because you're really conflicted, because you want to support the company, but at the same time, especially as a former CPA, that there's appropriate ways to do things, and that's what you need to ultimately fall back on. And one of the things that really worked for me was to be able to kind of expand the sphere of influence that I was dealing with. Get other people involved, raise the question, raise the concept to your boss, to other people involved, so that at some level, putting more fingerprints on the gun is important, but also to be able to say, hey, I'm not out here alone. I got to leverage the support of the people in the organization, so that there's a kind of a more of a weight against doing the right thing versus just the immediate action that is, it's very important, and people are creating a great sense of urgency, but it's not necessarily the right thing to do, because that just then propagates on an ongoing basis. And ultimately, we just need to put a stake in the ground and stop it.
Thanks for sharing. That's all very great advice. I'm actually going to open this up to the audience to see if there's any questions for any of our panelists, maybe around some courageous conversations you guys are working through now, looking for any advice. We've all got a good handle on our courageous conversations. All right, well then I'll wrap this up. And
I can ask a question.
go ahead.
Yeah, I actually have a question for you. So this is something, when you were describing kind of the way Swell started, I think the first two tenets that you described, a water bottle that looked as good as kind of the rest of the accessories, rings very true to what we're doing. Building a product that was up to the technical rigor of what is required also rings very true. The third focus on sustainability is something we are very focused on right now. But being a company that's making, we make leather products, we make plastic products, we're trying to figure out the right way to do that. And one of the challenges we're having is there's obviously an impact on your bottom line in a big way, but we also want to take a strong step forward in kind of addressing that. So my question to you is, I guess, you may have started from this as opposed to kind of learning and evolving from it, but how do you look at that kind of balance and trade-off, and how do you approach that?
It's it's really important because it was part of our DNA when we started. It's always been something that's been a focus, and it's been part of our mission statement since the beginning of time to be able to have that sustainability connection. And there's we ship products to Europe, we ship products to Canada, around the world, and there's places outside the U.S. that are actually far advanced in terms of the sustainability mission and how they're dealing with single-use plastic and recyclability. And we try and partner with some of the biggest organizations in the world. The big beverage companies are, part of their bottom line is driven by single-use plastic, and at the same time, we're trying to work with them to build an opportunity for them to better leverage the product that they control, the beverage, the sparkling water, filtered water, flavored water, but allow people to put it into a reusable device that allows it to be protected, to maintain its current state, but at the same time not propagate that piece of pollution or just kind of the single-use plastic. So it's something that we've always tried to align with charities and other organizations that allow us to push that mission. We established the Million Bottle project, where if we work with organizations and they adopt, 5,000 people adopt using products like Swell that eliminate single-use plastic, that over a year they will have eliminated 1 million bottles from landfills. And that's something that we put money behind. We try and make it something that we're sourcing sustainable in a sustainable way. We're trying to, if there is any kind of plastic in our pieces that's part of our product, we look to have recyclable or sustainable use there. And it's just something that we want to put the walk behind the talk and the walk out to go together.
Yeah, we want to make sure we're doing it for real, not just putting out a marketing campaign or kind of talking about it. Yeah. So yeah, that's great to hear.
And it's something that we don't have single-use plastic in the office. We have visitors come who are going to meet with people, and they gotta get rid of those plastic bottles before they come in. We'll be happy to give them a nice Swell bottle like you guys got this afternoon. But it's something that it's something we live every day, and it's really something that Sarah it's part of her DNA, and therefore it becomes part of the organization's DNA.
Great. Thanks for sharing. Any last questions? Yeah. Yeah, so just for the rest of the audience, so that's a question on employees that are dedicated to the company, good in certain ways, but maybe not best for the culture of the company or their specific work teams. So
I'll take that one. That's more common than you may realize. And what I've tried to do in the past is spend more time with that person. And sometimes it's a maturity issue. Sometimes if it's someone who's a little more well established in his career, it's a pattern that they've done. But if you take them under your guidance and you spend time with them and you work through those issues and let them see what other people see, it's worth the time and effort. If the person is not dedicated, not hardworking, not smart in accomplishing the company's objectives, you may try, but you want to keep the people who ultimately fit within the culture of the organization, but I also like giving people the opportunity to fit, and they just may not see it. But, you know, in some cases it works, and in other cases it doesn't. And when it just ultimately doesn't, it becomes more of a distraction, you have to make a hard decision.
The employees want leaders to lead. And if people are complaining about it, if it's impacting the culture like you talked about, it is a great opportunity to be a teachable moment and say, hey, listen, we need to change. But you know, ultimately, if the people aren't going to change, then you got to change the people.
I'm going to wrap this up, you guys here with a quote from Brene Brown. Vulnerability is our most accurate measurement of courage. And so I want to thank our panelists here because they were both vulnerable and showed courage by coming up on stage today and sharing their personal stories with you. And also thank the audience here for being courageous and braving this weather and still showing up today. So let's give them a round of applause.
Thank you.